All right. So if you've ever heard of a company starting a revenue department or a revenue operations department, RevOps, this might sound like a really like a fad or like this new trend that businesses are doing. And I've had a lot of people ask, is this something that's just going to pass away in 2 or 3 years and be replaced with something else? But I think it's going to stay. And the reason I think it's going to stay is because RevOps, revenue operations professionals are really good at one thing, and it's proving their value. It's actually what they do. And so today what I want to do is give you a framework that has a little mnemonic device for exactly how RevOps proves its own return on investment. So how much return is a company going to get for building a revenue team, for investing in RevOps as a discipline within their company that's responsible for the company's bottom line? And there are 4 ways of doing this. So I'm going to give you that framework. This is how RevOps proves its value. If your company is not performing in according to these 4 dimensions, then you either need to improve your RevOps, invest more in RevOps, or cut your RevOps team, right? But if they're doing well, then you need to invest more and lean more into that revenue team. So today we're measuring RevOps ROI with what I call the core framework. And today's revenue ecosystem is very complex, right? RevOps has emerged as kind of the organizational glue that aligns marketing, sales, and customer success around shared goals. And it is currently in kind of a young phase. There are a lot of buzzwords around it that have a bit of a learning curve at the beginning. But once you get into it and once you understand the language of revenue operations, the more you understand how intuitive it is that it can provide and prove its value to a company. So despite the growing prevalence of RevOps, there are still 75% of companies that will have a RevOps function by next year that still don't yet. And many struggle to demonstrate the tangible value of the RevOps departments they're investing in. A lot of the RevOps departments are currently leaps of faith based on theory, right? And measuring RevOps ROI, it's not just about tracking more data. It requires a structured approach that connects the investments in people, in processes, and in technology to real business outcomes. And unless you can do that, it's going to be very difficult to prove that the money you're investing in a revenue team or in a RevOps team actually has real measurable ROI for your company. But the promise of RevOps is that when you do invest that money in the revenue team or in a RevOps team, you're investing in a money printing machine. You're investing in your own money, right? And so theoretically and practically, this should be the highest ROI team that you have. And they should be held accountable in that way, but they should report on their success within that domain of accountability according to a standardized way. And this is my approach. When I kind of put this together, this helped me understand how to hold myself accountable and how to prove my own value to my own team and my own company. So I want to introduce this concept of the core framework, the CORE. So the core is just mnemonic. It's just a model that organizes how we think about RevOps ROI. Okay, core helps us think about RevOps ROI. So we think about C in core is cash flow metrics, right? Then O would be operational efficiency. R is retention and customer value. And E is execution and alignments. Each pillar, cash flow, operational efficiency, retention, and execution, each pillar encompasses a set of metrics and databases and actionable dashboard implementations. And so that's what I'm going to show you today. For cash flow, for operational efficiency, for retention, and for execution, I'm going to explain to you the metrics, the debates around those metrics, as well as the actionable dashboard implementations that you can use to determine whether you're winning or losing on each of those dimensions, okay? So by adopting this core framework, this language of core for your team, you can say, are we neglecting some aspect of RevOps ROI, or are we missing out on showing our value in some way, right? So by adopting core in your RevOps organization, RevOps leaders gain kind of a clear pedagogical structure for both analysis and communication, where they can teach their team how to understand the value that they're adding and how to leverage the value that they're adding, which elevates ultimately the stakeholder understanding and makes ROI impossible to ignore. So let's start off with this first aspect of core, cash flow metrics. And each of these pillars I'm going to be breaking down into like subcategories, right? So at the heart of any ROI discussion, core, C, cash, right, is this discussion of cash. This is revenue earned. This is costs saved. This is profits generated. And under this cash flow pillar, we can perceive 4 key metrics that we're going to measure to say, are we winning or losing on C, on core, on the C of core, right? On cash flow. So the first kind of subcategory of cash flow will just be revenue growth and ARR. So annual recurring revenue, ARR, is the bedrock metric for subscription-based businesses or revenue-based businesses, recurring revenue-based businesses, right? It represents this predictable revenue stream locked in over 12 months. And when marketing and sales and customer success functions work in concert under RevOps, then companies report 10 to 20 higher % in sales growth. A reflection of a more consistent, shareable kind of revenue planning for the company. So how would you track something like revenue growth and ARR? Well, for all of our examples today, let's just assume we're using a universal CRM like HubSpot, right? So if we filter, for example, all of HubSpot's closed won deals by deal type equals recurring and sum their annualized values, that gives us ARR. And the ideal dashboard visualization for something like this, let's say you want to build a core dashboard, and I'm going to recommend that you do this. Then I'm going to give you for each pillar in core and for each subcategory of each pillar, I'm going to tell you a dashboard implementation that's going to show and prove how you're winning in that way, right? So how do you report on ARR? You take closed won deals by deal type equals recurring, you sum their annualized values, and then the ideal dashboard visualization is that a line chart showing ARR trend quarter over quarter with a goal line overlay indicating target ARR, right? So there will be a disparity between your goal line and your actual performance. And if you're not hitting your goals, that's not an indication that you're doing something bad. Maybe it's an indication that your forecasting is off, right? It doesn't mean that you're underperforming. It just shows you how aligned are we with our data and with our actual real-time performance, with our leading indicators and lagging indicators. We're going to get a lot into that later. So first within core is cash flow, and first within cash flow is, of course, revenue and ideally ARR. Second within cash is profitability and cost ratios. So if a RevOps operation costs roughly 4% of revenue, then financial stakeholders will often expect a 3x return on that 4%. So if you're investing 4% of your revenue in a RevOps function, the finance department is going to expect a 12+% ROI plus additional revenue to justify that ongoing investment. And so there's two ratios that you can track that shows whether that investment is being realized in the expected way. The first is customer acquisition cost, CAC. So customer acquisition cost is total marketing plus sales spend divided by number of new customers. And a declining CAC means that RevOps optimizations, better lead quality, streamlined processes, things like that, are delivering cheaper customer wins. So what would this look like in a CRM implementation? So in HubSpot, for example, you would enter your campaign budgets, and then you would use campaign analytics to report cost per contact and cost per deal, right? That would give you something approximating CAC, customer acquisition cost. And then the visualization for that, I think, would be a stacked bar chart of CAC by channel, right? So you have a stacked bar chart where you have a time series x-axis and on a bar chart with a breakdown by channel, by acquisition channel. So we're doing we're kind of combining deal outcome with attribution reporting there. So we've got CAC. The next important number to help you report on profitability and cost ratios is LTV to CAC ratio. You often see this as LTV colon CAC. So that's customer lifetime value divided by CAC. And the best practice targets like hover around 3-to-1 LTV to CAC, right? So you're going to be wanting to be, on average, making 3 times over the lifetime of a customer what it costs to acquire them, essentially, right? So when this ratio rises, through a reduced CAC or an increased LTV, that means you're getting customers for cheaper, and the customers are giving you more over time. So that's a good thing when it rises. When it shrinks, and you end up, being in danger of paying more for customers than you're ever going to get from them in the lifetime of their use of you as a product. So when that ratio rises, it signals a more profitable growth fueled by that RevOps alignment, right? So the HubSpot implementation for that would be basically aggregate the deal history per customer, right? The CLV, and then compare that side by side. I think you have maybe two numerical reports where you've got CLV and compare that to CAC in a side by side like KPI cards. The visualization is that dual KPI cards. And then I think maybe in the middle of that, you have a calculated ratio prominently displayed there, or the two numerical reports side by side would actually kind of represent that ratio. So the third bucket within cash, right? So you've got revenue, you've got profitability and cost ratios. The third subcategory within cash is net revenue retention. This is a huge number, a huge number. A RevOps team that doesn't have a grasp on NRR, net revenue retention, isn't measuring the right things. Okay, this is going to be enormous. So RevOps spans the full customer journey, right? And retention and expansion matter as much as new revenue. NRR measures revenue kept from existing customers, and this is accounting for upsells, net of churn. So what does net of churn mean? It means that an NRR above 100% indicates that expansion sales outweigh churned business. Okay, so this is something that like proactive onboarding, data-driven health scoring, cross-functional coordination, all these things can achieve that. So what does this look like in a CRM implementation? Well, I think it comes down to sales admin a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're tracking, you're tagging deals by type. So is this deal new business? Is this renewal business? Is this expansion business, right? And then you build a custom report. So NRR equals starting revenue plus expansion revenue minus churned revenue over starting revenue. Okay, so again, on the top, right, you've got starting revenue plus expansion revenue minus churned revenue, all of that divided by starting revenue. The visualization for that, I actually think, I never use gauge charts, but I think for NRR, gauge chart actually works. So, and if you ever see a gauge chart on a dashboard, it's so funny because it's like this weird skeuomorphism. But a gauge chart, basically, which is like a speedometer, right, showing your current NRR with color thresholds. So if you have over 100 NRR, then it's green. And if you have 90 to 100, then it's yellow. And if you have below 90, then it's red, because that means that you're shrinking as a company. And then the fourth subcategory within cash, right? You've got revenue, you've got profitability and ratio metrics, you've got net revenue retention, and then you've got revenue per employee. So this is sometimes referred to as rep productivity. And this is where efficiency gains often manifest as more revenue generated per headcount. So so this is where RevOps can really show off. So if RevOps empowers each sales rep to close more deals by automating their administrative tasks with workflows, or standardizing their playbooks, or normalizing the sales process, providing real-time pipeline insights, things like that, then revenue per employee climbs. So the way that you track revenue per employee is pretty obvious, right? You take your total revenue as a company and you divide that by the number of revenue generating team members over a specific time period. And that obviously changes, right? Revenue per employee will change per month, per quarter, per year, depending on your time period. The visualization for this is going to be a bar chart comparing revenue per rep across teams, or across quarters, highlighting upward trends. So I think I would prefer to put this on a time series where x-axis represents months or quarters, and you have a breakdown where each bar is stacked by team or by personnel over time, right? So you're seeing revenue going up or down as a bar, and then you're seeing the share of each bar responsible for by a specific team or employee. Okay, so that's C, that's cash flow. Okay, in cash flow, you've got revenue, you've got profitability, you've got NRR, and you've got revenue per employee. Now, core within operational efficiency, right? Remember, core, you've got cash flow, operational efficiency, retention, and then execution. And so within operational efficiency, RevOps can really have quite an amazing and profound effect on a company's bottom line. So operational metrics are leading indicators, and we're going to get into the difference between leading indicators and lagging indicators later, but operational metrics are leading indicators of financial ROI. So they show how effectively the revenue engine is running and where bottlenecks or friction still remains. So for example, within operational efficiency, our first subcategory we'll deal with there is sales pipeline velocity. So this is a very interesting concept. Pipeline velocity distills 4 inputs into a single gauge of revenue speed. Okay. So you've got, as the divisor on top, you've got number of opportunities times average deal size times win rate divided by sales cycle length. Okay, that's your velocity. So again, that's number of opportunities times average deal size times win rate divided by sales cycle length. And speeding deals through the funnel, whether by shortening a 60-day cycle to a 45-day cycle or boosting win rates from 20% to 25%, that yields more revenue in the same time frame, right? So you're packing more revenue earned into the same time frame, and if you can do that repeatedly, that turns into more revenue overall. So that's kind of one of the functions or motions that you're looking to achieve as a revenue organization. So components to display here on your dashboard would be something like opportunity count, which is number of open deals, average deal size, which is just your average close one deal value, your win rate, which is your close one deal divided by close one plus close lost deals count, right? Close one count divided by close one plus close lost dividend count. And then your average sales cycle, which is average days from deal creation to deal close. And your visualization is going to be actually, obviously, each of these require different visualizations. So it's going to be sort of a composite section in your dashboard where you display, where you're reporting on deal velocity. Deal velocity should include that number of deals, average deal size, win rate, and average sales cycle. And that should be kind of a velocity scorecard that you have there that you can do a drill down per team or per employee from a coaching perspective, right? And so that velocity scorecard is going to feature those 4 number cards: deal size, average deal size, opportunity count, win rate, average sales cycle, right? That's going to be your velocity scorecard. Number 2, under operational efficiency, we've got conversion rates at each funnel stage. So small uplifts in stage-to-stage conversion multiply into significant revenue gains. Key conversion ratios, they include things like visitor to lead, lead to SQL, SQL to opportunity, opportunity to closed won, right? For example, HubSpot has out-of-the-box reports here. These are just life cycle stage funnel reports, or really any funnel report, where you're going to see the conversion rate per stage, right? So you might have a 20% conversion rate from visitor to lead, but have an 80% conversion rate from lead to SQL. And then you have a 15% conversion rate from SQL to opportunity. What does that mean? That means that your top of funnel is not performing. Your marketing team is just applying no qualification to handing off leads to sales. And then sales is having a very difficult time closing those leads, right? So there's going to be a misalignment there. And having a funnel that has very staggered success rates is going to show you that there's alignment issues. Okay. So that's just one example of how to measure, of how you can harvest insights from conversion rates. And look for optimization opportunities there, as well as if you have a very sort of even flow in your funnel, that's a really good way to show off an alignment that your RevOps organization has achieved. A third subcategory of operational efficiency will be average sales cycle length. So we talked about this a little bit, but the average number of days to close the deal is a direct measurement of the efficiency of your revenue organization. It's one of the most direct ways of measuring the O in core, that operational efficiency, right? Shorter cycles free capacity for additional opportunities, and they reduce time to revenue. So a HubSpot implementation of this would look like a time to close report in deals analytics, and a visualization would be like a line chart of average days to close by month or by quarter, annotated to mark major RevOps initiatives, right? I'm going to get back to kind of annotating these reports in a little bit. We're going to actually talk about some design tips for when you put this dashboard together, right? Your core RevOps dashboard. But fourth in operational efficiency is going to be your operational productivity metrics. So this comes down to staff activities beyond pipeline health, beyond direct revenue measurement. RevOps often frees sellers from manual tasks, which saves the company on labor time and labor costs, but also frees up their mental time and their real time to pursue more and more valuable leads. So for example, we're tracking activities per rep, number of calls, number of emails, number of demos logged, number of deals closed, things like that. We're also looking at lead response time for SDRs, right? For sales development representatives. We're saying, how many hours from lead creation to first outreach. We're looking to number of tasks that were automated. We're looking at number of workflows that are handling routing or follow-up. We're looking at all of these things in a visualization. So what does a visualization like this look like? I think it looks like a clustered bar chart comparing the activities logged versus deals closed by rep, right? Alongside a gauge for average lead response time. So when you're comparing activities logs to deals closed by rep, what you're doing is you're comparing the amount of time being burned per deal, right? So you're actually, so you're measuring efficiency directly there, right? How much value are we extracting per task, per call, per email, that kind of thing, or even per automation. And then finally, we've got something like forecast accuracy and pipeline predictability. So reliable forecasting really underpins strategic planning. So pipeline coverage ratio, like pipeline value divided by revenue target and forecast versus actual comparisons, show whether RevOps improvements in data quality and reporting yield more accurate projections. So a visualization of this is going to be a waterfall chart illustrating forecasted versus actual revenue for a period. And that kind of highlights the variance there between whether your forecasting is working and whether it's actually data informed and how that compares to the real-time performance. So, RevOps really sells itself on saying, we're going to help you be more data informed about how to plan for the future of your revenue and how to be more programmatic so that you can not only predict your success, but scale your success through a repeatable system that, works a certain percentage of the time to produce a certain amount of value. But if your forecasting's off, that means you don't understand what's working or why, which means that you don't have your thumb on the pulse of how to scale, which is a problem, which means you're flying blind. Okay. So within core, you've got cash flow, operational efficiency, then you've got retention and customer value. So retention and customer value is another dimension on which you measure RevOps success or failure. So true RevOps ROI reflects not only new business revenue, but also the lifetime value and the loyalty of existing customers. So CLV measures total revenue, like the total revenue that a customer generates over their entire relationship with a company. So when RevOps aligns sales and onboarding and customer success, and they're ensuring those smooth handoffs are happening, and that the engagements that are occurring during those handoffs are data-driven, then CLV climbs, customer lifetime value climbs, right? So the way to track this, again, we've touched on this metric already, but the way to track this is to aggregate deal history per contact or per company. And then the visualization there is going to be a table of the top 10 customers. I don't love using tables as visualizations, but in this case, I think it makes sense to have a table of the top 10 customers by lifetime deal value, each with a spark line showing their revenue growth over time. The second subcategory there is going to be customer acquisition costs, which again, we've also touched on, right? But here we're touching on it under, previously we touched on customer acquisition costs under cash flow, but here we're touching on it again as a way to report on retention. So customer acquisition cost, right? This is marketing plus sales spend divided by new customers. This should decrease as RevOps optimizes targeting and qualification, right? So I think the best way to visualize this, this marketing plus sales spend divided by new customers is like a dual axis bar/line chart with bars for CAC by channel and a line for overall CAC trend. And then a third subcategory within retention is going to be directly measuring retention rate and churn, right? So reducing churn is often more cost-effective than acquiring new customers. So tag churned customers via lifecycle stage or a custom property, right? And then you want to calculate. So retention rate is going to equal customers at the end of a period minus new customers, right? So customers at the end of a period minus new customers divided by customers at the start of the period. I'll say that one more time. That's customers at the end of the period minus new customers divided by customers at the start of the period. And the visualization there is going to be a dual line chart of retention rate versus churn rate over time. And then a fourth metric that you're going to be tracking within the R, within retention, is upsell and cross-sell revenue. So label expansion deals in your pipeline as expansion so that you are able to track these, right? Versus new business versus renewal, right? But expansion, actual upsells. And the way you want to visualize this is actually very simple. It's just a pie chart, probably. This is for a specific time period. This is the amount of our sales that were retention, amount of our revenue that was retention, new business, and this is how much was expansion, right? Or you could do a time series bar chart with a breakdown. And then the fifth, this is more of a customer success metric, but is NPS score and customer satisfaction. So that's what you'll want to measure under retention as well as NPS score. And so NPS score is more qualitative, but NPS surveys, where you rate a company between 1 and 10, I think, NPS surveys is a native feature within HubSpot Service Hub and many other customer success desk tools like Zendesk and Intercom and things like this, right? These serve as indicators of future growth, and higher NPS often correlates with more referrals and lower churn. So a visualization for this, for NPS, actually, I think, again, I'm going to go with the gauge because a gauge for current NPS plus like a trend line of NPS over time is going to give you your current state and historic state. So it allows you to use NPS as both a leading indicator and a lagging indicator. And then finally, in core, you've got E. So you've got cash flow for C, operational efficiency being measured for O, retention being measured for R, and then E, you're measuring execution and alignment. No single department has ever owned revenue until revenue departments came along, until RevOps came along, right? But RevOps, it thrives on this cross-team alignment measured by the bottom line of the company. So it's motivated by the company doing well, and it organizes its activities around this kind of accountability. So the execution and alignment pillar, right? CORE, cash, operations, retention, execution. This E pillar, execution and alignment, captures metrics demonstrating really how effectively the organization works as one cohesive unit, right? So RevOps talks a lot about alignment, which is fine as a buzzword, but do you have a RevOps dashboard that's proving that your alignment is providing a real revenue return for the company? So this is where the E principles and dashboards come in. So first dashboard, first set of metrics that you're going to want to have for measuring execution and alignment is attribution and revenue attribution models. So this is like fundamental meat and potatoes baseline RevOps. You have to have it. Multi-touch attribution reports in HubSpot, they assign revenue across, they assign revenue credit across marketing, sales, and engagement activities. So a visualization for this is going to, again, be like a stacked bar chart of revenue by original source under different attribution models, like a first touch weighted, last touch weighted, linear, something like that, right? And HubSpot has a really good reporting certification that kind of takes you through all the different models and how you can apply them to different revenue situations. The second kind of subcategory under execution and alignment is data quality and forecasting accuracy. So like we've already said, RevOps really, a lot of its perceived value and its credibility comes from the perception that it helps the company to behave and plan in a more data-informed way. So better data hygiene leads to better forecasts. Track the percentage of records missing required fields and measure forecast versus actual variance, right? So you want to have visualization where you have a bar chart showing here's a percentage of records missing required properties by objects, right? I want a bunch of bar charts that shows deals, contacts, companies, right? This is what percent of new deals, new leads, new companies are missing core critical, mission critical data, right? This is showing compliance issues. So 3 is going to be interdepartmental alignment metrics, right? So here's where we quantify our handoff success. So I want to know, for example, lead acceptance rates. What are our sales accepted MQLs divided by total MQLs? What are the number of leads that marketing is handing over to sales versus the number of leads that sales is accepting, right? So that's, shows important requirements, not only for marketing to perform its due diligence and have appropriate lead qualification standards, but also for sales to go through the formal normalized process of reviewing the leads before they just start dialing. This is important. Otherwise, we do not have visibility into whether marketing is doing a good job from a sales perspective, right? Next, we have SLR, sales to lead ratio, which is opportunities created divided by leads received, right? So of the leads that sales receives, how many deals are they actually being created from those leads? That shows us really that appointment set or SDR performance slice specifically, which is a really helpful number to have. So you've got lead acceptance rate, which is that marketing to sales handoff performance. SLR, sales lead ratio, which is, again, opportunities created divided by leads received, shows us SDR performance. And we've got some, of course, classical opportunity metrics like number of opportunities, win rate, things like that, which shows us account rep performance. And then for the visualization there, I think we've got kind of like a mini funnel chart annotated with acceptance percentages for MQL to SQL to opportunity. And then finally, you've got within E, you've got goal tracking and OKRs. So HubSpot dashboards support goal lines. And so setting targets like a 25% increase in MQL to SQL conversion for 15% reduction in sales, average sales over time, things like that. These are going to be visually comparing actual performance to goals. This keeps RevOps initiatives focused. So a visualization for this would be goal line charts. And these are out of the box for HubSpot. You can't really standardize these too much, but I think that's okay. You've got these goal line charts for each OKR. The OKR is an objective or key result. And again, an objective or key result is a projective, forward-looking metric we want to hit, which is distinct from a KPI, which is a lagging, retrospective, piece of historical data, which is have we hit this, right? It's telling us if we have been doing our job versus telling us where we'd like to go. You could almost say that you use KPIs to measure whether you're succeeding with your OKRs. And so you have goal lines for each OKR with kind of colored zones indicating you're on track with green, you're warning in yellow, and then off track it would be a red performance. So let's get into a couple debates that these things give rise to, right? So even with core as a guide, RevOps leaders kind of still have to acknowledge these competing perspectives on what really counts as ROI when it comes to determining like the value of RevOps as a function within an organization. So the first debate that you might hear, even with core, even saying, to measure RevOps, we're going to measure cash flow, we're going to measure operational efficiency, we're going to measure retention, we're going to measure execution and alignment, you're still going to have these debates. And the first one is hard dollars versus soft gains. So finance stakeholders usually insist that hard revenue lifts and cost savings, right? So while RevOps practitioners point to operational improvement, so faster cycles, better forecasts, things like this, that pay off over time. So the solution between this, are we measuring ROI in hard dollars, like the actual bottom line, or are we measuring it in soft gains, like operational efficiency, right? The solutions is to present both the lagging indicators, like revenue and profit, as well as the leading indicators, like efficiency, both those metrics side by side. Very important to do that. Second debate is, do we focus on deal or opportunity velocity or volume, right? So if we accelerate deal velocity, but without sufficient pipeline volume, then total revenue may actually stagnate, which is an interesting paradox, right? And conversely, if we're doubling lead flow without improving win rates, that can overwhelm teams. So core balances both, right? You measure your pipeline size under cash flow, and then velocity is what you measure under operational efficiency. And both of those you're accountable for as a RevOps organization. and then, for example, also you measure conversion alignment under execution. Another debate you might find is like cost cutting versus growth enablement. So early RevOps wins, really like in the early days of RevOps, came from tool consolidation and headcount rationalization. Hey, we got on HubSpot and we saved $30,000 a year, right? Like a quick ROI via cost reduction, right? So it's easy for them to justify the investment. But long-term RevOps really, it can't depend on that, right? Long-term RevOps must show value by driving upsells and cross-sells and new business, metrics captured under retention and customer value under the R of core. And then finally in RevOps, you've got attribution complexity. So this is isolating RevOps impact from product enhancements or market forces. That gets really tricky, right? Let's say your product team releases a new feature, sales team improves its sales by 20%. Does RevOps get credit for that? Maybe. Right? But you have to be able to show why and how you own your share of the company's success, right? So one way to do this is like combining A/B pilots with before and after trend analyses, and that provides, I think, the most compelling evidence, right? So again, we want to translate this core framework cash flow, operational efficiency, retention, execution to a HubSpot dashboard, right? A well-structured RevOps dashboard in HubSpot can bring the core framework to life. So organize your dashboard into 4 sections. One pillar, like one section in your dashboard, in your dashboard per core pillar. With the following components, right? You've got C for cash flow. That's going to be your ARR, your total revenue, your CAC, your LTV to CAC ratio, your net revenue retention, your revenue per employee, things like that, right? Then you've got your operational efficiency. That's going to measure pipeline velocity components, conversion rates, sales cycle, activity metrics like calls, meeting logs, deal creation opportunities, all of those ratios, right? Then you're going to want to track R, which is retention and value. That's going to be your CLV, your CAC, your retention rate, your churn rates, your expansion revenue, your NPS score. And then finally, you're going to track execution and alignment, which is your attribution, your forecast accuracy, your data quality, your lead acceptance rate, and your OKRs, right? And then I do have a few little design tips for designing your dashboard. Just 4 little tips. Number 1, use text modules to annotate the key events, right? So on your report, have a text module that says, this new lead scoring model launched in April, see 5% increase in MQL to SQL conversion, right? So you're calling out your wins. You're calling out the inflection point of your value from the dashboard. So you're making it as easy as possible. You're shortening the time to value, the time to perception of value in the dashboard users. Whether that be your executive team or your investors or whoever. A second little design tip is group metrics by pillar so stakeholders can navigate between cash flow, operational efficiency, retention and customer value, and execution and alignment. And explain this concept to them. Explain this core concept. Say, hey, listen, we're measuring cash, operations, retention, execution. Boom, 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 boom. These are the 4 sections. And that'll help them immediately break down and segment what they're looking at. You're teaching them to be fluent in the perception of your value. That's what this framework's for. That's why I developed it. And then third, you want to set goal thresholds, right? So green, yellow, red for critical KPIs. HubSpot will color code metrics outside of acceptable bounds for you. So just use that feature in your HubSpot reporting. Again, the point isn't to litter your dashboard with all these different colors. It's to use it to highlight the most granular level at which you're creating the most value and to draw the eyes of the users of the dashboard towards that area. And then finally, you want to establish a refresh cadence, right? So labeling which metrics update real time versus monthly and set clear expectations, right? Some metrics are going to update rolling 90 days. Some are going to update monthly. Some are going to update daily, right? So you want that to be clear and maybe perhaps even have separate dashboards that are identical that have the same or that have measure different components of time. Or what I like to do is in HubSpot, you have quick filters where you can add a quick filter that changes the dates reflected for the objects being reported on the dashboard from this week, last quarter, last month, that kind of thing, right? So that's it. That's the core framework, right? The explosion of data in modern revenue teams, this demands this kind of unifying framework, I think, to measure what truly matters. Otherwise, you're just another guy building dashboards with a bunch of buzzwords in your company. You're just another CRM admin, right? And RevOps professionals have the opportunity to be much more than that, right? That core framework, cash flow, operational efficiency, retention, and customer value, execution and alignment. Like it provides a pedagogical model that organizes RevOps metrics into 4 digestible pillars and allows you to be an educator within your organization about your own value. So mapping these metrics into ideal HubSpot visualizations transforms abstract concepts into visible outcomes, right? So rising ARR, falling customer acquisition costs, accelerating pipeline velocity, deeper customer relationships, right? Higher customer satisfaction. By presenting both these leading and lagging indicators side by side and doing it within the 4 buckets of cash, operations, retention, and execution, RevOps leaders can speak a shared language, and they can teach their company and their leaders and their bosses that language, right? And it also teaches them to think this way to make more data-driven decisions. So when they're making decisions, they're thinking about your dashboard, and they're wanting to see that gauge go up, right? and consistently prove that RevOps is more than a buzzword by doing this. And by creating this dashboard and answering people's inquiries about what you do with your own dashboard is an essential driver of sustainable, visible, and scalable growth.